Isn't that place amazing? And what about this one? Morrowind is packed with fascinating spots just waiting to be discovered. Sometimes you stumble upon places with an incredible atmosphere and great loot, and other times you find locations so strange you can't believe they actually exist. That's exactly what we're doing today. I'm taking you on a little tour through some of the most interesting and downright weird spots I've found in Morrowind so far. I still have a lot of the map left to explore, so I'm sure there are plenty more hidden gems out there waiting to be found. Alright, let's get started. The first place I want to talk about is one I found during one of my Telvanni quests. I had to go to a tower and defend it from House Hlalu. The area was pretty close to Molag Mar, and since I hadn't explored that part of the map much at this point in the game, I decided to head there first and do a bit of exploring before starting the quest. While wandering around, I came across a few tombs, including one that turned out to be something really special. At first, it looked like any other tomb, but then I found a trapdoor with an 80-level lock. Right away, I thought, okay, something amazing has to be behind this. You don't just see locks like that in tombs for no reason. So I picked the lock, went through a few hallways, and suddenly found myself in this massive labyrinth. The moment I saw it, I knew the place was special. Of course, I didn't bother walking through it properly. I just used my levitate spell, and that's when I found it. A mysterious underground chamber with a ship in the middle and a skeleton lying on it. The skeleton was wearing a full set of armor, and there were weapons scattered around. It looked like the burial site of an honorable warrior. The whole scene had a strong Viking vibe to it. And of course, with a place this cool, there had to be some treasure, right? I checked the boat and found some valuable stuff like ebony bracers and an ebony sword, but honestly, I felt a bit disappointed. I didn't feel like the treasure was worthy of this place. The whole atmosphere really raised my expectations. So I kept searching. I even dove underwater and found some raw ebony. Nice, but still not what I was hoping for. After checking every corner a few times, I decided to leave. I started flying over the labyrinth to head out when I thought, no way, this can't be it. There has to be something more. I have to go back. And that's when I saw it, a small hole near the ceiling. I couldn't believe I had missed it before. I flew up there, but I still couldn't reach the chest. I'm not sure if I just couldn't get the right angle to fly inside the small space, or if it's meant to be tricky. I was so glad I already had the telekinesis spell. Without it, I probably wouldn't have been able to grab the loot. Inside the chest were a few random items, nothing special at first glance. But right next to it, lying underground, was the Daedric Face of God. Now, that's what I'm talking about. An awesome piece of armor, and the name fits the place perfectly. Oh, and right next to it was the Daedric Warhammer, definitely the most valuable item there. Luckily, I was already using Mark and Recall spells, so I could teleport back with all that heavy loot and store it safely at my base in the Balmora Mages Guild. The whole area, the labyrinth, the ship with the skeleton, and that hidden treasure near the ceiling is one of the best spots I've discovered so far. And the best part? I found it completely by accident while wandering around before reaching my Telvanni quest destination. The tomb taught me one thing: always check every corner. You never know when you might spot secret hole in the ceiling that leads to something amazing. Exploring tombs and caves in Morrowind is just so exciting. Almost every journey leads me to something unexpected, some hidden treasure or a strange, atmospheric place. Alright, time to explore another place. Next spot is really interesting too. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary camp with a nice waterfall nearby. But when I looked around, I noticed something unusual: this lantern. It had a duration of almost 32 years. At that moment, I was wondering if that was really unique because I didn't know much about other lanterns yet. This was about my 15th hour in the game, and I wasn't really using lanterns yet, just a torch a few times. After that discovery, I started looking into different lanterns, and all of them lasted around 2 minutes. So yes, this one is very special. And the funny thing is, I found it so early in the game. But you know what isn't funny? how I lost it. I had been using it a lot, walking at night, exploring tombs and caves, basically anywhere I needed more light. I totally loved it. It looked cool and felt really immersive. I had this lantern for maybe 15 or 20 hours of gameplay, and then one day it just disappeared. I wanted to equip it and it wasn't in my inventory. I was so sad. It had been such an epic discovery and super useful. At first I thought, okay, maybe I sold it by accident. I checked all the merchants I had sold stuff to. Luckily I had been selling mostly in Balmora, so it wasn't too hard to check, but nobody had it. So I started going through my recordings to figure out exactly when it disappeared. Took me a while, but I narrowed it down to a 10-minute window in one of the clips where somehow I lost it. I watched the 10-minute segment and still had no clue back then. Then, many hours later in the game, I noticed a cool detail. If you have a lantern equipped and go into water, it breaks completely. Suddenly, everything made sense. I had been using the special lantern so much that at some point I got lazy and stopped unequipping it when I didn't need it. I checked the recording again, and yes, during the 10 minutes I went into water in first-person view, so I didn't even notice the lantern had disappeared. There is actually a sound when it happens, but I didn't hear it, or I just assumed something around me made that noise. So this awesome spot gave me probably the best lantern you can get, but unfortunately it's gone for me now. What I also love about this spot is the key under the lantern, which I think opens a locked chest nearby. I'm not completely sure because I opened the chest first with a spell before taking the lantern. If you like using lanterns a lot in the game, I really recommend this spot. Besides that, it has such a calming vibe. The sound of the waterfall must be so soothing at night while watching the sky. I wonder who this camp belonged to, or if it's possible to hear about this location from any NPC. Before we move on to the next spot, let's just appreciate this lantern one more time. It was the first lantern I ever used in Morrowind. How lucky and unlucky at the same time. Okay, let's move on to the next spot. One day I decided to explore the islands east of Dragonfell and came across a Khajiit standing there. The island itself is basically just a huge rock with nothing else interesting on it, so it's kind of wild that someone even decided to put an NPC in such a small, lonely space. The place is definitely strange, but also really cool. And this Khajiit really stands out. He talks about some weird stuff like a mudcrab merchant, but also about a shrine. His words are mysterious but easy to understand. Let me read what he says. Look to the seas to the west. There lies what was once the shrine. Take a deep breath and begin your search. You have no idea how excited I was reading that. I had been curious about underwater discoveries for a while, and I had already done a few dives in different spots before I met him, but I didn't find anything interesting, mostly just slaughterfish. Talking to the Khajiit made me sure that I could actually find some cool spots underwater. The funny thing is, before searching the spot he mentioned, I was exploring nearby islands and accidentally noticed an entrance on the local map that surprised me. I had been there just a moment ago and didn't see any door. I checked it out and it was almost entirely underwater. What a nice discovery. I explored the cavern and at first it didn't look that special. But while flying around I noticed another hidden spot, kind of like the hole near the ceiling in the tomb with the burial site. I checked it out and found a weapon worth 7,000 gold. Not super special, but I really love finding things hidden like that. But what about the shrine the Khajiit mentioned? I went far out into the western waters and after some time I finally found it. I couldn't believe my discovery. It was amazing to see the shrine underwater. The vibe of the place is definitely unique, even though slaughterfish and drag were trying to ruin it. This place is really cool and it's great that I actually found out about it from the NPC. He talks about all kinds of weird stuff and the island he mentions in his dialogue sounds really peculiar. The way he describes asks how to find it is even more mysterious than the directions to the shrine. I definitely have to check that out. The next interesting spot I found popped up during my walk from Seydanin to Ebonheart. I wanted to start building my Telvanni stronghold and needed a construction contract, and since I hadn't really explored the area between those two places yet, it felt like the perfect moment to finally do it. And that's when I stumbled on a really fascinating sixth house cave. The place immediately feels creepy and mysterious the moment you step inside. Those red candles lining the tunnel set the tone right away. On top of that, I got attacked by ash ghouls, which actually worked out perfectly because I needed 2 strong souls for the stronghold anyway, so I trapped them while I was there. The most interesting thing about this cave is this huge open space with a heavy, unsettling atmosphere. There was also a creature I had never seen before. My sixth house knowledge is still very poor, so I have no idea what this creature actually is or if it has some special purpose. I trapped its soul just in case it turns out to be useful later and kept exploring. The bells, the altar, and the lava below all come together to create this incredible dark vibe. And of course, I had to check the bells, and yes, you can actually interact with them. They make sounds when you touch them, and now I'm wondering if they have some hidden purpose, like maybe you need to ring them in a specific order for something to happen. I clicked a few of them back then, but I didn't notice any change. In this space, I also found a hidden chest. I had to use a levitate spell to get to it, but the loot wasn't anything special. The rope wasn't worth much, and the enchantments weren't interesting either. But still, the whole cave definitely left an impression. Another interesting location is Telfir, which I visited during one of the Telvanni quests. At first glance, it didn't feel like anything special, just another huge Telvanni stronghold. But then I talked to Divafir and suddenly I became very curious about this place. He mentioned his daughters, or as he calls them, a little project, a side benefit of my researches into corporate disease, that instantly grabbed my attention. It immediately made me think of Resident Evil 8 and Lady Dimitrescu with her 3 created daughters. And now I'm wondering if someone who worked on that story was a Morrowind fan and actually took inspiration from the Wave's experiments. Who knows, but the similarity is definitely there. What also got my attention was the way he casually mentioned being an enchanted item collector and how he allows thieves to try stealing from him as long as they follow a few rules. That was something I definitely wanted to look into. So between the NPCs living here, their stories, and the Divafir himself, the place was already getting really interesting. But there was still a lot more to discover. Right next to the wave, I noticed a strange key with a number on it. It looked suspicious and felt like it might be connected to some hidden treasure, so I grabbed it with a telekinesis spell just in case. Then I talked to his daughters and learned that below Telfir is the Corprosarium, a place where people affected by the corporate disease are kept. That sounded extremely interesting, but before heading down there, I explored the rest of the tower. That's when I found a locked door, and behind it was a woman being kept prisoner. What surprised me the most was that she teaches athletics. At that point in my playthrough, I couldn't find anyone who could train me above the level I already had, but she can train you all the way up to level 75. That alone made her worth the visit. But the most exciting part of Telfir is the dungeon itself. When I first went into the Corprosarium, I found several chests with a lock level of 100. I didn't have a spell strong enough to open them yet, so I left and came back later once I was ready. Before heading back into the dungeon, I decided to explore the tower again. I found a chest also with a lock level of 100. I opened it and found another numbered key. A little later, I found a locked wardrobe also with a high level lock, and inside was the most insane loot I found so far. A cuirass with a constant 60 points of resist magicka. It's worth 150,000 gold and the enchantment is amazing. And all of this happened just because I decided to snoop around the tower. That's wild. And to make things even crazier, I also checked the locked chest near Divafir. Turns out it's hiding another insanely valuable weapon with a summoned remora and scamp enchantment. So what about the Corprosarium and the chests? I went back down down there and run around trying to avoid all the corpse monsters, hoping to find something good. But honestly, it was just more keys and junk. Diva Fear probably had a great time watching me struggle down there. But hey, I already stole an amazing item from his tower, so the least I could do was entertain him a little. But Telfear has one more detail that makes it truly unforgettable. Inside the Corpressarium, besides all the chests, you can actually meet the last known living Dwemer. When I saw him, I was speechless. I never expected to experience something like that. And it's so cool that you can learn more about the disappearance of the dwarves, especially if you have already found the books while helping Edwina at the Mages Guild. So the entire Telfear Tower, along with its underground, is easily one of the best places I have discovered so far. Interesting NPCs, the Corpressarium with its chest, the last Dwemer, and some amazing loot, even if the best item was not in the chest at all but in the wardrobe. And by the way, those keys and chests kept bothering me, so I finally looked them up. I normally don't Google anything about Morrowind because I don't want spoilers and I like to figure things out myself, but since I had already checked all the chests, I thought it was safe. And what I found out is that the keys can be used to open the chest in a specific order, and the final one is near the last Dwemer. The reward is a Warhammer. I actually found it because, like I mentioned, I opened all the chests with a spell. But since the value and the lack of enchantment did not impress me, I did not even take it. Still, the idea that you can open all those chests using numbered keys instead of a spell is honestly genius. I love small details like that, and I also love that the game lets you choose how you want to handle it. Time for another cool spot. I found this one during a Fighters Guild quest when I was sent to Suran to collect some debt money. You probably already know what I'm talking about. For me, the quest was a perfect excuse to finally explore the town. Suran was actually one of the places I had been curious about for a while. I had passed through it a few times using Sid Striders, and the view from the platform always looked really interesting. But you know how it is, you can't explore everything at once, so I kept prioritizing other quests and areas. So I started walking around and really enjoyed the vibe of the town. I checked a few different merchants, and while exploring, I noticed some red lanterns hanging above the entrance to one of the buildings. That alone made me suspicious of what kind of place it could be. Then I checked the name of the building, and my suspicions only grew stronger. I walked in through the upper door, and at first everything looked normal. There were tables, a small stage, nothing too crazy. I also noticed a locked door on this floor, but I quickly went downstairs. And yes, it was exactly what I thought it would be. A tavern with special entertainment. And I have to admit, I was surprised to see moves like that in such an old game. Someone definitely put a lot of effort into that detail. Honestly, I think Caius Casades would fit right in here with his outfit. Where is his performance spot? Okay, so after seeing everything down here, I wondered what could be behind the locked door upstairs. And again, I had my suspicions, it's pretty obvious, right? But I wouldn't be myself if I didn't check it. And yes, there was a room with a bed perfectly sized for this place and a red lantern above it. Actually, everything around was red, the carpets, the bedding. Morrowind has crazy details, that's all I'm going to say. The funny thing is, the person I was supposed to find for the Fighters Guild quest was actually the owner of this place. Oh, and by the way, I decided not to do the Fighters Guild during my first playthrough because as a mage I didn't feel like I belonged there. But I'm glad I joined even for a little because this quest was the perfect excuse to finally explore Suran. Okay, let's move on to the next spot. On one of my adventures where I wasn't even trying to complete any quest and was just exploring, I found another really interesting tomb. After a few fights, I ended up walking through a waterfall and suddenly found myself inside a space with narrow, high paths and even more waterfalls. The place immediately felt mysterious and cool. Then I noticed a fancy-looking door with an 85 level lock. It reminded me of the tomb with the Viking-style burial site where I also found a high-level locked door. After picking the lock, I stepped into another unique space. The room was dark with a faint red glow coming from the the lava below. Of course, I had to use my levitate spell to explore every corner. I found some awesome loot here, including the Daedric Face of Terror, so even the treasure felt similar to what I found at the ship spot. But the most striking visual element was definitely the forge, with a chest just hanging in mid-air above it. How cool is that? Inside, I found a weapon with a constant effect, which I decided to use since so far I'd mostly been carrying staffs for their looks and they didn't have any constant effects. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if I stumbled across the One Ring to rule them all here. Just imagine it. This place totally feels like Mount Doom from Lord of the Rings. Lava below, a forge above, and all that atmosphere. The One Ring was actually forged in the fires of Mount Doom, and this spot really gives me that vibe. Technically, someone could have been inspired by Lord of the Rings, but probably more by the books, since only the first Lord of the Rings movie had been released before Morrowind, and that was just a few months earlier. And those were all the most interesting places I found. Of course, I discovered plenty of other cool spots, but these few really stuck in my memory. Like I mentioned before, I still have a lot of the map left to explore, so I'm sure there will be many more crazy locations waiting to be found. What do you think about the places I shared? Are some of them your favorites too, or do you have a completely different list of spots that surprised you? I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, thanks for watching.